Ladies and gentlemen, Final Fantasy XV is still my favorite mainline Final Fantasy video game, and in this video, I'm going to try and tell you why. So for those of you who might not be aware or have been living under a gaming rock for the last 10 years or so, Final Fantasy XV originally released all the way back in 2016. But it actually started its life as a kind of, sort of spin-off of the Final Fantasy XIII series called Final Fantasy XIII Versus, before it eventually became the Final Fantasy XV that I know and love. So why do I love this particular entry? Why is it probably the Final Fantasy game I have replayed over all of the others? Why is it the Final Fantasy game I'm always defending and recommending to people who maybe didn't give it a chance back in 2016? Well, let me explain that the only way I know how. Badly. So where do I start with my love for this game? Well, let's start with the story. So, Final Fantasy XV takes place on the fictional world of Eos. Aside from Insomnia, the capital of Lucius, all the world is dominated by the Empire of Niflheim, who seek control of the magic crystal protected by the Lucian royal family. On the eve of peace negotiations, Niflheim attacks the capital and steals the crystal. Noctis Lucis Caelum, heir to the Lucian throne, goes on a magical quest to rescue the crystal and defeat Niflheim. Soon Noctis will discover his true destiny as the true king, destined to use the crystal's powers to save Eos from eternal darkness. So that's a very basic description of this game's plot, but what I absolutely adore about this entry, I don't know about you, dear viewers, but have you ever played a game or watched a movie and said to yourself, good lord, how I would love to have a prequel to that movie, how I would love to see events in that movie taking place from another character's point of view. Hell, how I would love to read a book that maybe expands on the events of that game and or movie. Well, like some Final Fantasy games before it, most noticeably Final Fantasy VII, Final Fantasy XIII, and Final Fantasy X, Final Fantasy XV is blessed by not only being just one video game, but in fact 4 video games. So we have the main game, we have a prequel game in which we play as Noctis' father and his friends, we have a VR fishing game, we have a multiplayer online game, and of course we have all the DLC for the main Final Fantasy video game. Not only that, but we also have a movie, Final Fantasy XV Kingsglaive, which actually tells us about all the events of the nefarious Niflheim actually attacking the capital and stealing the crystal, as well as the death of Noctis' father, the introduction of Ardyn, who I will be talking about soon enough. There's even a bloody novel for some of the DLC episodes that unfortunately the makers of the game didn't get to bring to fruition in the end. Though I'm just so over the moon that we got DLC episodes for Prompto, Gladiolus, Ignis and Ardyn, as well as the Royal Edition of the game, which adds some new cutscenes, completely changes the final dungeon of the game, for the better might I add, and gives us plenty of other boss fights to get our teeth into. And I frankly just cannot get enough of this game's story and its characters. Our central quartet of Noctis, Prompto, Ignis and Gladiolus is probably my favorite party in a Final Fantasy game ever. That's not to say that the other games don't have parties that I really enjoy, especially Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, even 13. But there's just something about the bond that Noctis has with his friends in this game that just gets me every time. And yes, when I say gets me, I do mean cry. Since 2016, I probably cried with this game 2,472 times. Give or take a couple of times. Because frankly, I just get absolutely emotionally invested in this game's story. Not only in Noctis' quest to discover he's the true king and to stop Ardyn and all his nefarious plans, but also the love story between Noctis and Lunafreya, which sadly is very short-lived. And for those of you who have played the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Oh, I should have mentioned at the beginning of this particular video, but I probably am going to spoil everything about the game, so be warned. So yes, Lunafreya ends up being murdered by Ardyn, this game's antagonist, and what an absolutely fantastic antagonist he is. In fact, he is so great that I'm going to be making a video after this one detailing why I think Ardyn is probably, most certainly, the best villain in any, that's right, any Final Fantasy video game. So you can look forward to that. But all I'll say about him right now is, you've always got to watch out for the quiet, funny ones. Ardyn comes into the story, acts like a bit of a nuisance, though he does help our party out in more than one occasion. But then it gets to that point where Noctis is about to be reunited with Lunafreya, and the bastard murders her. And yes, I know this isn't the first Final Fantasy game to have a shocking death in it. Everyone remembers Final Fantasy VII. But there's just something about Lunafreya's death in this game, just how sad it is and how evil Ardyn is. Let's not forget the original Final Fantasy VII had nothing more than a couple of sound effects and some music. There was no voice acting. So of course it was much harder to be affected by that death, though a lot of people were. But I'd still say that Lunafreya's death is right up there with some of the saddest deaths in video games, well, ever. Ardyn is just such a wonderful villain. In his DLC episode, yes, we get to see his backstory. We see how he was once a noble, proud man who was in love, but then gets betrayed and seeks revenge against the person who betrayed him. Not only that, but his entire bloodline. And I can empathize with that. If someone betrayed me and stole my love, well, I might try and take over the world as well. Destroy the universe. So, be warned, all you people out there. Don't do that to me. Don't betray me. Just don't do it. Just don't even think about it. Just do something else. This game also has one of my favorite worlds in a Final Fantasy game. And there's nothing more enjoyable than traversing it, carrying out the side quests, fighting the monsters. And boy oh boy do I love the fighting in this game. I've always been a big advocate for action RPGs as opposed to turn-based RPGs. And this, for me, was the first truly action-focused Final Fantasy video game. Mainline video game, anyway. Of course, we'd had other things like Dirge of Cerberus, Final Fantasy VII, which was a kind of sort of Devil May Cry ripoff. But this, Final Fantasy 15, was the first true action RPG I can remember in this series. And of course, being a fan of Devil May Cry that I've already mentioned, hack and slash video games like Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance, I absolutely adore the combat in this game. There's also some spectacular boss fights. Of course, we have the climactic showdown with Ardyn. We get to fight Ifrit. We get to fight Bahamut in the Comrades DLC multiplayer. We get to take on Titan, Leviathan, and those are particularly exciting affairs. And when I'm thinking of this game, that's generally the word that comes to mind. Exciting. I know a lot of people have problems with the first 9 or so chapters of the game, and then how linear it becomes after that. But I personally absolutely love it. There's nothing worse than the back end of a game being padded out for reasons, and I love the way that Final Fantasy 15 is pushing our characters towards the big final showdown. So the first 9 chapters being the most open in the whole game makes a lot of sense to me. That means you can carry out those side quests I was talking about. You can hunt monsters. You can explore. You can ride a chocobo. You can find some secret boss fights and secret dungeons. And these secret dungeons are where you'll obtain the royal arms, which is more weapons that Noctis can use. And in fact, every single person in the party has access to more weaponry that you would find in an American's basement. Swords, broadswords, a crossbow, a revolver thing, shield, polearm, you know, the usual. The DLC episodes for each respective character like Gladiolus and Prompto not only come with their own story content, but you actually get to play as these characters. And as part of the Royal Edition of the game, that means that when you're playing the main game, you can switch between the characters. I do wish we had got an online co-op opportunity for the main story mode, but we can't have everything. As far as I'm concerned, this game gives me more than enough. So what else do I love about the game? I would be an absolute sinner if I didn't mention this game's musical score, composed by the very, very talented Yoko Shimomura, whose work you might be familiar with in the Kingdom Hearts series of video games, a series that I also absolutely adore. But next to the soundtrack for Final Fantasy VII, which is very celebrated at this point, this is probably my favorite Final Fantasy soundtrack since Final Fantasy VII. Lush melodies, great boss music, great action music, a couple of cues that definitely sound like they've come out of the Kingdom Hearts games. Absolutely stupendous. And some of the more emotional tracks, like Lunafreya's theme, oh my god. And who knew that music could make a scene of a car breaking down so damn sad? For those of you who played the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. For me, Final Fantasy 15 is the perfect example of the greatest hits of the Final Fantasy series. We have a storyline involving crystals, we have betrayals, we have friendship, we have a central love story, which I think is very, very important in a Final Fantasy video game. And it's actually one of the things that's sorely lacking in a game like Final Fantasy XII. No love story. Is it a coincidence then that Final Fantasy XII is one of my least favorite Final Fantasy games? I think not. This might have started life as Final Fantasy Versus 13. And let me just say here, I adore Final Fantasy 13. But this game truly stands as its own, as a true mainline Final Fantasy entry, and I absolutely adore it. In fact, there's probably lots I could have said in this video that I just forgot to say. Damn me not taking notes before I make these videos. But honestly, if you're a Final Fantasy fan, you've been hesitant to try this game before, or maybe you were put off by some of the more negative reviews for this game, then get your ass in gear and get this game played. Make sure you buy the Royal Edition. That way you're going to get all of the DLC, the online multiplayer modes, the extra cutscenes, the extra story content. And if you enjoy that, well, go and watch Kingsglaive. Download the little beat-em-up prequel game thing. Maybe buy the novelization, which contains the cancelled Lunafreya DLC episode. But whatever you do, always stay obsessed with gaming. Are you still here? Oh, You must have really enjoyed this video then. In that case, you had better subscribe to the channel and check out our other content. Otherwise, you're a booby pants, and no one wants to be a booby pants.